What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the Alto again, and this time we are here with Ischemic. Thank you both so much for being here. It is great to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here.
Thanks so much for having us.
Anytime, anytime. It's awesome to have you here. Congrats. First off, I want to say congratulations on last year's milestone of 10 years of Ischemic. It's 10 years since we heard the self-titled demo from back in the day. But now we got the brand new album, Condemned to the Breaking Wheel. Was this sort of a follow-up or like a sequel or continuation of what we heard off of your previous self-titled album, or was this meant to signify like new territory or like a new beginning for Ischemic?
I think it was for sure a little bit of a new beginning. We still have like elements from like our past, but for sure it's a new beginning because we have had like our old members leave, and then we got the production and everything was handled by me, which was not the case in the past. So yeah, it's like we took it in a bit of a newer direction, and our influences changed as well. So yeah.
What was there sort of a vision or a concept or like sort of like a goal in mind with the making of this, or being that there was a lot of new changes with production and whatnot, that it was almost kind of like a very improvisational songwriting process?
It was more like we didn't have like a specific goal, but we just knew that we had to make sure we use all our great like the new stuff like music we found over the past few years during COVID especially, and we needed to incorporate that somehow like in the record, and that would be our like the main thing sonically and like songwriting wise, and then also with the songwriting, like we split the duties. I wrote 2 songs, and then the guitarist wrote 2 songs, and then we did the rest on top of that.
So this is a question I like to ask, because if people were to maybe get to know all of you on a personal level, and maybe would they be able to then listen to a song and know, okay, Tomb Fog was written by this member, or Abandon it was written by this songwriter, etc. Is it kind of like that in a way, or when you finally produce it and deliver the final product, you kind of like blend everything together to the point where you can't really distinguish that?
I think it's pretty obvious who
Yeah.
wrote which songs when you know, because Tomb Fog and Condemned to the Breaking Wheel were written by Adam, our guitarist, and Abandon and Rust and Bones were written by Campbell. And from there, when you listen to them, you're like, oh yeah, it's really obvious who wrote which song. At
Yeah.
least in my opinion.
And like people who know me as well, like they're like, okay, so this too, I'm pretty sure you wrote that, like, and stuff like that.
Well,
Personally.
so, but when you when you all have to play the material together and you're all listening to the material together, depending on who wrote what, does it almost feel like a different energy was channeled into it, or does it maybe resonate with you different because maybe Adam wrote a song and you didn't, or something like that?
Yeah, I think it all comes together pretty well. Like we feel the same energy for all the 4 songs.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, we have like that understanding. So like even if I'm writing a song and that's like coming from like my perspective, I also write like to make sure that everybody else enjoys it. So like it's kind of like that nice like happy medium. So when we do play it, and if you listen to the album as a whole, it'll seem like it's a combined effort essentially. So yeah, we don't get like thrown off like which energy kind of thing. Yeah.
You mentioned your influences changed. So are we going to hear like it? Because I think that this is a big evolutionary jump when you compare Stagnation and Woe to the self-titled to this album. Especially because I also feel like I tend to overthink album titles to the point where like my brain is on fire. But like I feel like having Stagnation and Woe, that I feel like that's almost kind of something that's very similar. When we're very stagnant in life, there is sort of like a essence of melancholy. When we're not moving forward, we just feel like we're sinking in quicksand. But Condemned to the Breaking Wheel, I feel like that almost, it's a motivational quote, like you're kind of keeping the wheel grinding, you're kind of pushing forward, but also being condemned to something broken also is something that maybe you don't want to be a part of. So in terms of the lyrical meaning behind it, and maybe just me overthinking the ever loving hell out of it, just the meaning of this album, is it very different on a personal and an emotional and lyrical level than Stagnation and Woe as well, and the self-titled.
I'll let you take that because we wrote the lyrics together. But
So Stagnation and Woe, I believe I wrote all those lyrics. Obviously, I was in a very different place in my life then. But for Condemned to the Breaking Wheel, like Campbell and I wrote the lyrics for Condemned, Rust and Bones, and Tomb Fog. I think I wrote by myself, and then Campbell wrote all the lyrics for Abandon, and I just kind of sang them, and it just worked really well. But yeah, very different place in my life, and it's just, I think it comes through how much we've all evolved as songwriters and as musicians, and it just sounds more polished and mature, and like we've been through a lot in the last few years, because we all have, right?
Yeah, of course.
So to your point, sorry, to add to that, like the Condemned, you actually hit it pretty much on the spot.
Yes.
Where like it is like in the artwork, it seems very medieval and old school, but it has that relatability towards the modern way of life and existential dread, which we always love to write about. So yeah.
It's almost like, what is worse, the feeling of that dread, like knowing that it's there, like something that we're dreading is coming, or maybe when that thing is already there and we're in the midst of it, what is worse, knowing that it's coming or being in the midst of that?
Exactly. And if you have a choice, and if you do have a choice to keep it going or do whatever with it. So
would you say Ischemic maybe does approach things from a very conceptual standpoint? Could lyrics or like a lyrical idea maybe help dictate the music itself in a way, or do you all prefer to have full songs and maybe a full album written before you know what the material is going to be about?
Yeah, generally speaking, the music is written first, and then the lyrics come after. And most of the time, the lyrics are approached from a very human experience standpoints, like different perspectives at different times in your life, like usually negative experiences and just how you cope with them. And like the lyrics are this, for the first time ever, we're going to be publishing the lyrics for this album. I've never published lyrics in the past. So, I mean, I like to write lyrics that you can kind of assign your own meaning to, and everybody can read them and resonate with them in a different way. So I really hope that people have that experience now that we're actually publishing the lyrics.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned negative experiences as well. And, I've always said that when negativity or pain or any form of just darkness in one's life is the fuel to the fire, obviously when we are at our worst, art tends to be at its best. It's like one of the cruelest dualities of life. But sometimes we can become victimized by our own product, as I like to say, where do you feel that, is there sort of a balance in your songwriting process that you all have to maintain to make sure that you're able to create the art without letting the art sort of consume you?
Yeah, like me personally, because when I produce and stuff, I produce this album and stuff, and that's the whole idea. It's like you said, if we let the negative experience get to us, then the album is not going to be recorded anytime soon. We're just going to be dreading it and stuff. But I personally think, like me personally, I've learned a lot from artists. My background used to be very prog based before joining this band. So the biggest influence Steven Wilson or something like that. So he writes some really depressing, exactly. He writes some really depressing stuff, in the past at least. Now I guess he's happy, but
yeah. Well,
but he doesn't he gets the job done, So I just take his essence and I obviously I project that towards the band. So it's it kind of balances itself out, the negativity and the productive.
Steven Wilson, when I saw Porcupine Tree live 2 years ago at our Radio City, amazing show.
Yes.
I just love how his sense of humor kind of could go, if you don't mind, we're going to do something a little more depressing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
The way that he's able to kind of make that depression seem so jolly. It's
jolly, yeah.
I've always said that it's like a trip to Dismal Land instead of Disneyland or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, exactly, and it's yeah, that's good.
Does lyrical subject matter, or even music for that matter, always come from within, or are there also external sources of inspiration as well?
The music usually at this point it's starting to come from within. I would say after 10 years, because when you're starting off as a band, you're usually kind of like influenced by your top favorite bands, and then you just kind of go that route. But this one was a bit like just kind of let it happen. So let it flow and whatever feels right to us. We didn't overly like edit or like try to like manufacture something that's like we basically didn't overthink, and it's just kind of like this. We just took this simple like approach. It's like, okay, if the song is telling you to go somewhere, then just go with that. You know. So, yeah.
And you all have fairly impressive resumes. Mentioning that you have a progressive background and prog background, but I know that you were all in a couple of other bands. I mean, your Metal Archives resumes are pretty impressive, I must say. So, has playing with different projects been an influence for Ischemic as well, or do you were you all with the formation of this band, or just with this band in general, kind of keep other projects or other endeavors mainly separate and leave this as more of its own thing?
Like for me, I play in this other death metal band, Morse Verum, which is a progressive death metal band, and initially I was like you said, like I was when I would write songs for Ischemic, it would like seep in a lot of my like influences, but then I also grew and times changed, and I realized like, no, this has to be its own thing, and once I was able to put that headspace in myself, then I was like able to we were able to okay, this is its own thing. The other projects are its own thing. I think it's just a matter of headspace, where kind of thing, because like both those projects have overlapping influences, but some more than the others, kind of thing, right? So kind of like that, yeah.
I definitely tend to agree. I've always kept Ischemic very separate from my other projects, because Ischemic is something that I started with Adam back in 2012. And from the get-go, it was always like, this is going to be a death doom project. And we just both clicked on that from the beginning, and that has not changed. So, it's always been very separate, because it's ours.
Yeah. Well, the prog, I think, just shines through with your song lengths. I mean, you're able to make 4 songs with the length of album with like 17 songs. So I think that maybe that's the one underlying armature of your prog background being there. Yeah. But with the genre of doom, I love talking about this because I quote unquote love doom. I love that style. That's why I was very excited to talk with you today, because I think your music literally goes along with any band as classic as Yob or Candlemass, you name it. But like, I do feel like doom in itself is a very broad term at this point. You mentioned death doom, and I do see the death metal and doom metal elements. It definitely sounds like what it says on paper. But Catatonia or My Dying Bride has been labeled as doom, but Yob, which sounds nothing like them, is also labeled as doom. And then, I mean, they're even calling Black Sabbath doom, which I think is asinine in a way, because I don't think they were calling it back in the day, just like what people are calling Iron Maiden power metal. But like, does doom have to have a specific element that ties it all together? Because I've seen plenty of doom metal songs that are just under the 3-minute mark, but I've also seen plenty of doom metal songs that have very polished and not as distorted guitars. So what classifies something to meet that threshold of it being doom?
So I think there's like this 3 overarching categories in doom, like as of now. I've like in my experience with exploring all these genres, and I think it comes down to like this 3, which is like, you got like what they call the stoner doom, right? Which is when the Sabbath kind of seeps in, because 60s or whatever, and then you get like bands like Elder, what are the other, Artless, all the great bands, but they tend to lean towards more like bluesy, Sabbathy style. So you get that, but then like you got the melodic doom, which is like, again, I'm just like saying melodic, but like just to for simplicity's sake. But what I'm trying to say is like that's like Catatonia, you got like Swallow the Sun, and all these bands like Paradise Lost, I guess. Yeah, like so they have that like kind of more more melancholy element to it, right? Compared to the stoner side, which is more like you're just kind of surfing along and having a good time, but kind of still like have that underlying theme of like hanging out. I call it. I don't know the better way to put it. And then the same thing with death metal, death doom. I find it more like obviously talks more about some more brutal stuff and like more darker and cavernous stuff. But like you were asking, I think the underlying thing is like the hangout element. I think all these three categories you could like if it's a doom, like you just kind of you just put it on your playlist and you can just kind of like relax to it. But in that relaxation, you have like these three different options to choose from. It's like, am I feeling angry relaxation? Then you go for death doom.
Yeah.
Am I feeling like But that's how I see it.
I feel like it's medicated chaos in a way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There you go.
Yeah,
that's it.
One of my favorite albums in doom would, if you classify it as the Silent Enigma by Anathema, because that has the melodic elements behind it, the doom elements, the very polished but very raw elements. I think it's like it has to be very raw with its emotion, and I feel like maybe the more produced something is, the more it can hinder it. I feel like that is I feel like overproduction is the biggest enemy of doom. I feel like overproduction. I feel like overproduction isn't terrible for like a power metal band where it's all polished, every note in the guitar solo counts. But in doom, I think it's meant to be left kind of raw.
Yeah, 100% agree. Like, and that's why I usually go with everything myself, like production wise, because like so it stays true to the the sound it's trying to achieve, kind of thing, instead of like me applying all those like techniques for mixing and stuff like that, which are not really needed in the context of doom. Like, so.
And I have two more questions for you all. One of them is going back to the songwriting process, being that all of you, it sounds like Ischemic is a very collaborative effort, which I think is great, and everybody contributes into songwriting. But in the end, you're making this album together, and you have to perform this material together as well. So when it comes to, playing one of the other members' songs, or them playing one of your songs or something like that, do you almost have to kind of put yourself in each other's shoes to identify with it? Do you almost kind of have to be in their emotional state of mind in order to execute that song? Or in the end, it's just playing the music? You don't really need to separate yourself when playing an Ischemic song?
Yeah, I would say when we start off jamming and stuff like that, like before we record and stuff, we practice before the shows, we take that time to kind of like feel it out. And yeah, initially it does feel like you're trying to like be in their shoes. Like I usually, as a drummer, I know what she likes for vocal cues from the drums. So I am trying to like, emulate that. Like, as like, okay, I'm gonna choose this particular fill because I know she's gonna enjoy it, and or like I do a bomb blast instead of like a regular blast because I know the guitarist would enjoy it because it's his song, kind of thing. And just like we try to make each other musically happy, essentially. Like it's like, oh yeah, I think you would like that. I think that's what you want because we've been friends for a long time.
It comes naturally.
Yeah, it comes naturally. So at the end of it all, it just becomes like, okay, this is like a thing we do together now. So
it's
like,
never forced. It always feels right.
Yeah.
Which is always amazing because, and I don't really fault artists for doing it. Sometimes you do need to force and dig that inspiration out. Like, I don't, like, obviously you don't want to just, assembly line cookie cut every song you make, but sometimes you do have to look deep within yourself and really force that out. Sometimes you may have to face sides of yourself you don't want to face in order to force that out. So I don't always believe that it's always forcing something out, as if you just have to work hard to kick down that door or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. And we have like influences that like help us communicate with each other. So if like Adam wants me to do something and he's like, I'm not liking what you do, then he just tells me like a band or something, and he's like, look, you hear that sound, I want that essence of that. So
Yeah.
it just works out.
Yeah, brutal honesty. It's always the most helpful tool, but also the most painful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you both so much for your time today and for an awesome conversation. But most of all, thank you for giving us another beautiful Ischemic album and continuing to give us amazing music. Is there just anything else with Ischemic you would like to promote with the release of this brand new record? Maybe upcoming shows, maybe coming to New York one day, please.
Yes, we would. Well, yes, we would love to play the States. Obviously, for now we have like 2 major shows that are lined up after the release, and which we're super excited because these 2 bands that are headlining, we have been like they have been big influence on us. One of them is local. They're called Fuck the Facts.
I interviewed them. Great band.
Oh, perfect. There you go.
Oh.
So they're like
Our heroes.
yeah. We really.
I think
love
I've
them.
interviewed like half the population of Canada at this point. So,
Awesome. Yeah.
yeah.
So there's that, and then the other band that we're gonna be supporting is from Atlanta. And they're called Malevich,
Okay, I've heard of them.
and they are also like really big like influence on like our songwriting and everything. And if we ever play the States, our biggest hope is, especially in New York, is that we get to play with Colin Marston from Corrales. You know,
That'll be awesome.
because he is also one of the biggest influence on us, and
Yeah.
he's-
There's a lot of bands based in the city that would like be a match made in heaven or hell, whatever you prefer, to play with. I mean, there's bands like Final Siege and Endless and Viserion, like Protagony, like a lot of like doom, death, blackened bands that will just
Exactly.
immerse you into an abyss of darkness. You'll play in New York and you'll instantly become one of our bands. You won't be a Canadian band anymore.
Amazing, yeah. We have heard a lot of good things like that, and yeah, you just have to figure out the logistics and
Yeah,
figure it out how we're gonna make it.
the
right now.
logistics. I mean, where in Canada are you based out of?
We're close to Toronto. It's a city called Kitchener. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I mean,
It's not too far.
I'll take a trip up to upstate, way upstate New York, and I'll sneak you guys in.
Yes, totally. We'll be ready.
Yeah, I would love it. Imagine that being on the news. Man gets arrested at border for trying to smuggle band into the country.
Oh,
Band
yes.
into the
Instant
States.
fame, right?
You know what? I've heard people do a hell of a lot stupider shit to get famous. So
Yeah, that's true. So this is not as bad.
Yeah. But thank you all so much, everybody. We are here with Ischemic. Be sure to check out their kick-ass new album, Condemned to the Breaking Wheel. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Alex.
much. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.